My darling Leo, I see you. I see what you have been carrying, and I am going to begin tonight by taking the title of this reading and correcting it slightly, because I would rather be accurate with you than comfortable. The universe is not about to put you first. You are already first, and you have been declining the position, in small increments, for a very long time. I want you to stay with that for a moment, before you argue with it, because your sign will argue with it within about 4 seconds, and the argument will be a good one, and it will be wrong. There is a difference between not having something and not taking something, and it is the whole subject of this reading. A person who has not been given a seat, and a person who has been standing beside an empty one for 11 years look almost identical from the outside. They feel almost identical from the inside as well, which is why so few people ever work out which one they are. I am going to help you work out which one you are. Stay with me, because I am going to do 4 things tonight. First, I am going to explain why your sign is structurally first, in a way that no other sign is. And I want to be clear that this is not flattery, and it is not about being better than anybody. It is about a specific and rather strange property of the body that rules you, and once you understand it, a great deal of your own behavior will make more sense than it currently does. Then I am going to give you the 5 ways you have been giving the position away. There are 5, and they are specific, and they are uncomfortable, and I would ask you to listen for the ones that make you flinch rather than the ones that flatter you, because with your sign, the flinch is nearly always the accurate signal. Then I will show you the cards, and I will tell you 2 stories, one where it worked and one where it did not, because I would not be honest with you if I only told you the first kind. And at the very end, I am going to tell you the single most important thing I know about being put first. I want to warn you now that it is not the thing you came here to hear. It is going to sound, in the first 30 seconds, like bad news. It is not bad news, it is the opposite, but it takes about a minute to become the opposite, and I need you to be there for the whole minute. I have watched Leos misunderstand this one specific point for 35 years, and the misunderstanding is, I think, the single largest waste of a Leo life that I encounter in my practice. So stay to the end. I do not say that in every reading, and I am saying it in this one. I am Madame Aurora, 35 years studying the stars from my office in Manhattan, and let me be honest with you before we go further, because honesty is what your sign actually respects, and warmth without it makes you suspicious. This reading is not tied to a particular week or month or year. I have built it that way deliberately. A great many readings on this subject are constructed around a passing alignment, and the difficulty with those is that a person finds them 2 years later and is told the sky has arranged itself for her when it dissolved long ago. Everything I am going to tell you tonight rests on the permanent structure of your sign, and it was true a decade ago and it will be true whenever you happen to find this. Now let me tell you what that structure actually is, because it is genuinely unusual and almost nobody explains it properly. Your sign is ruled by the sun, and the sun is not a planet. That sounds pedantic, and it is the most important fact in this entire reading, so let me say what it means. Every other body in a chart is defined by its relationship to something else. Mercury is measured by its distance from the sun. Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, all of them are described by where they sit relative to it, how far ahead, how far behind, whether they are rising before it or setting after it. Their positions are relational. The sun is the thing they are all measured against. It is not in orbit. It does not go retrograde, and I want you to sit with that one because it is unique. Every other planet in your chart appears, from where we stand, to stop and reverse and go backward at intervals. Mercury 3 or 4 times a year. Venus every 18 months. Mars every 2 years. Not the sun. Not once. Not in your lifetime. Not in anybody's. It has never changed direction, and it never will. And it returns to its exact original position in your chart once a year, on or about your birthday, with a regularity that no other body offers. My darling, what that gives your sign is not superiority. I want to be very careful here, because there is a version of Leo astrology that flatters people into being insufferable, and I have no interest in producing it. What it gives you is a reference point. You are, in your own life, the thing everything else is measured against. Not the most important person in the room, which is a different claim, and usually a false one. The point from which your own life is measured. And when that point moves, everything measured by it has to be recalculated. which is why your decisions have consequences for the people around you at a scale that genuinely surprises other signs. And here is the part that matters tonight. A reference point cannot be given to you. It is not awarded. It is simply where you are standing, and the only question available is whether you are standing there or have vacated it and are waiting for somebody to invite you back. That is why I corrected the title at the beginning, not to be clever, because the whole difficulty of a Leo life is contained in that distinction. There are also two rhythms worth knowing. The first is your solar return. Your ruler comes back to its exact position once a year, and for your sign that period, the weeks around your birthday, is the most charged of your year, every year, for the whole of your life. Things that have been sitting quietly tend to come up for air then. If this reading has found you near your birthday, that is not mysticism. It is simply that your sign is most itself at that point in the cycle. And the second is the 12-year rhythm of Jupiter, which takes roughly 12 years to travel the zodiac and return to your sign. That year is the most expansive of every 12. If you count back 12 years, and 12 before that, most Leos find something. Those are the years in which the seat becomes conspicuously available. And I say available deliberately, because availability and occupancy are not the same thing, and this entire reading sits in the gap between them. Now let me give you the 5 ways you have been giving away first place. I want to say before I start that none of these are moral failings, and I am not going to treat them as such. Every one of them is a strategy, and every one of them worked at some point, usually a very long time ago, usually in a household where it was the correct thing to do. They are not stupidity. They are obsolete competence. The first is that you go last so that nobody has to ask you to. This is preemptive. Watch what happens when something is being divided. Food, time, credit, the better chair, the good news in a conversation where 2 people have news. You do not wait to be asked to yield. You yield before the question can be raised, in a way so fast and so smooth that nobody in the room registers a yielding occurred, including you. And you tell yourself it is generosity. My darling, some of it is. But notice the speed. Genuine generosity involves a decision, and decisions take time. What I am describing has no gap in it at all, and a response with no gap in it is not a choice, it is a reflex, and reflexes were installed rather than chosen. The second is that you make your own want conditional on somebody else's. Somebody asks what you would like to do, and you say, honestly and warmly, that you do not mind, that you are happy either way, that you would rather they chose. And here is the thing your sign does not know about this. It reads, to the other person, as flexibility. It is not flexibility, it is an insurance policy. If you never state a preference, you can never be refused one, and you can never discover that somebody would have declined to give you what you wanted. The cost is that you also never find out that they would have given it to you gladly. That information is not available to a person who does not ask, and a great many Leos have spent decades in relationships that would have accommodated them beautifully and never once tested it. The third is that you take the role that keeps things running instead of the role you want. There are 2 positions in most rooms, the one that makes the thing work and the one that gets to do the thing. Your sign is exceptionally good at the first and wants the second, and takes the first every time, because if you do not take it, nobody will, and the whole thing will fall apart. And you are usually correct that it would fall apart. That is what makes this one so difficult to dislodge. It is not a delusion. You genuinely are holding it together, and the moment you stop, there genuinely is a period of things going badly. But my darling, I want you to notice something. The role that keeps things running is a role in which you cannot be evaluated. Nobody judges the person who made the event happen. They judge the person who performed at it. And a sign as sensitive to being seen accurately as yours has a quiet, unadmitted reason for preferring the position where the verdict never comes. The fourth is that you have accepted being needed as a substitute for being chosen. This is the largest one, and I am going to spend a moment on it. Being needed is enormously satisfying. It is reliable, it is unambiguous, and it arrives constantly, because there is always somebody who needs something and your sign is visibly capable. It also produces a version of love that feels very close to the real thing. People are warm to you. They are grateful. They tell you they do not know what they would do without you, which is one of the most seductive sentences in any language, and which is, when you examine it, a statement about their situation rather than about you. Being chosen is different and considerably scarcer. Being chosen means somebody looked at the available options, including the option of not choosing you, and selected you when they did not have to. My darling, the reason so many Leos accumulate need rather than choice is not that they cannot be chosen. It is that being needed is available on demand, and being chosen is not. And a sign that requires a great deal of confirmation will take the reliable supply over the scarce one every time, and then wonder why the reliable supply never quite satisfies. It does not satisfy because it was never the thing you wanted. It is the nearest available substitute and you have been living on it. And the fifth is that you discount an offer the moment it arrives. Watch this one. Something good is offered, and within seconds, before you have decided anything, a process begins. They are only saying that. They would have asked anybody. It is not as significant as it sounds. There must be a reason they came to me, and it is probably not the flattering one. That is not modesty, my darling. And it is not caution. It is a preemptive strike. If you discount it immediately, you cannot be disappointed later by discovering it was smaller than you hoped. You have protected yourself from a specific humiliation, which is the humiliation of having wanted something visibly and having been given less than you wanted. The cost is that you have also made it impossible to receive anything, ever, at full size. Now, my darling, before I go on, I want you to do something with me, and it will take 20 seconds. Pick one of the 5. Not the one that was most interesting to hear, the one that produced a small drop in your stomach. And now name one specific instance of it, from the last month. Not from your childhood, which is where your sign will want to go because the past is safely finished. From the last month. A meal, a meeting, a conversation, a decision about a weekend, one occasion on which you did the thing. Hold it. I am going to ask you for it later, and I would rather you chose it now, before you know why. Now let me show you what the cards are saying, my darling. I pulled 3 tonight. One for where you have been standing, one for what is actually available, and one for what it requires of you. The card I pulled for where you have been standing is the 7 of Wands. A figure on high ground, holding a staff, and 6 more staves coming up at him from below the frame, held by people we cannot see. Most people read this as embattlement, and that is correct as far as it goes. But look at the details, because they are the reason it appeared for your sign tonight. He is already on the high ground. He has the advantageous position, and he is not enjoying any part of it, because he is entirely occupied with defending it. And in most decks, he is wearing mismatched shoes, 1 boot and 1 shoe, which is the small strange detail that tells you he was interrupted. He did not prepare for this. He was doing something else, and had to stand up and start holding the line. My darling, that is the Leo who has been holding everything together. In possession of a strong position, unable to derive any pleasure from it, defending against demands from people whose faces are not even visible in the picture. Everyone who is asking something of you is below the frame. You cannot see who they are. You are simply responding to the staves. The card I pulled for what is actually available is the 10 of Cups, a couple with their arms raised, 2 children playing beside them, a house on a hill behind, and 10 cups arranged in an arc across the sky. It is the most straightforwardly fortunate card in the entire deck, and I want to say something about why it is so rarely anybody's favorite. It is not exciting. It contains no drama, no achievement, no recognition. It is a picture of a life in which the ordinary things are in place, and nobody is fighting. And here is why it appeared for you. Your sign frequently cannot recognize this card as an offer, because it does not look like a prize. There is nothing to win in that image and nothing being awarded. It is simply sufficiency, and a sign that has organized itself around earning tends to look straight past sufficiency in search of the thing that has to be deserved. Whatever is actually available to you, my darling, looks more like the 10 of Cups than like a coronation. And a great many Leos have declined it on the grounds that it was not impressive enough to be the thing they were waiting for. And the third card, for what it requires of you, is the Emperor. An enthroned figure, upright, ram's heads carved into the stone of the throne, a barren mountain range behind, an orb in one hand and a scepter in the other. He is looking straight ahead and he is entirely still. This is the card of occupied authority, and I want to be precise about the word occupied. The Emperor is not being given anything in that image. Nobody is crowning him. There is no ceremony taking place. He is simply sitting in the chair, and he has evidently been sitting in it for a considerable time, and the whole of the card's meaning is contained in the fact that the sitting is not in question. That is what is being asked of you, not to be awarded the position, to occupy it, without ceremony, without confirmation, and without anybody present to witness the moment it happened. Now, before I take you any further, let me pause. If what I have said so far has landed, if one of the 5 produced a drop, if the 7 of Wands and those mismatched shoes describe something about how you have been living, tap that little like button below this video. It is a small gesture and it does something real, which is tell YouTube that this matters to actual people, and it carries it to another Leo who has been holding a line all week against people whose faces she cannot see. Your like is how she finds it. And if you are not yet subscribed, this is the moment. Subscribe and turn on the bell. I make these readings for every sign, and I make them so they can be found whenever somebody needs them. Now let me tell you about Corinne. Corinne was a Leo client of mine, born in the middle of August, who came to me in her early 50s, and she came about something that was not, on the surface, a problem at all. She had been the deputy head of a school for 19 years. Not the head, the deputy. And she had been, by every account including the heads, the person who actually ran the place. Timetabling, staffing, the difficult parents, the crisis at 4 in the afternoon, the thing nobody else would handle. 3 different heads had come and gone in those 19 years, and she had trained all of them. She came to me because the 3rd one was retiring, the post was being advertised, and she had decided not to apply. I asked her why not, and she gave me 4 reasons, and every single one of them was true. She was 52 and it was late to start. The commute would change. She was not certain she wanted the public-facing part, and the school needed continuity in her existing role during a transition. I told her that all 4 were accurate, and that none of them was the reason, and she was, I am pleased to say, annoyed with me, which is usually the point at which a Leo starts telling the truth. The reason, when it came out about 20 minutes later, was this. She said, "If I apply, and I do not get it, then I will have spent 19 years being told I was indispensable by people who did not actually think I was capable, and I would rather not know." My darling Leos, I want you to sit with that sentence, because I suspect a version of it lives in a great many of you. She had been operating a strategy. As long as she never asked for the position, the 19 years could continue to mean what she needed them to mean. Applying would put the 19 years at risk of being retroactively reinterpreted. I said to her, "Corinne, you are not protecting your future. You are protecting your past." She did apply, and I want to be honest and say that the story does not resolve the way a video like this usually wants it to. She did not get it. An external candidate did. But here is what happened, and it is the reason I still tell this story. Within 4 months of the appointment, she was approached by another school, in a different borough, who had heard she had gone for it. That is the whole mechanism, and it is unglamorous, and it is how these things actually work. Nobody knew she wanted it because she had never once indicated that she did, and the moment she indicated it, the information became available to people outside the building. She was a head teacher within a year. She retired from that post some time ago now. She told me, when we last spoke, that the significant moment had not been the appointment. It was a Thursday afternoon in the application week, when she had written the sentence about why she wanted the role, and had read it back and had thought, quite calmly, "Oh, I have wanted this for 11 years. 11 years, my darling," and she had never once said it out loud, including to herself. Wait, before I go on, I need to interrupt myself, because I know precisely what a portion of you is thinking, and I would rather deal with it directly than let it run underneath everything else. You are thinking, Aurora, this is all very well, but my life does not look like a life the universe is favoring. Something is genuinely difficult. Somebody is ill, the money is not there. I am not standing beside an empty throne. I am standing in a situation with no good options in it. Let me answer that plainly. Because your sign deserves plainness, and because the spiritual version of this idea is dishonest in a way I will not reproduce. I am not telling you that your difficulties are illusions produced by insufficient self-belief. I am not telling you that if you simply occupied your position, the hard thing would resolve. That is not true, it has never been true, and you would be right to switch this off if I said it. Here is the narrower claim, and I think it is more useful. Occupying first place in your own life is not the same as your circumstances being good. They are unrelated. There are people in genuinely fortunate circumstances who have never once occupied their own position, and there are people in extremely constrained circumstances who occupy theirs completely. And the second group is, in my experience of 35 years, considerably better company and considerably more durable. What I am describing is not an outcome. It is a posture, and it is available in almost any circumstance, and it usually shows up in something very small. Saying what you would prefer for dinner. Declining one request. Not adding the qualifier to the compliment. Those cost nothing, and are available on a bad day in a hard year. And I will say one more thing to those of you in a genuinely constrained season, a caretaking period, an illness, an obligation you did not choose. The 5 behaviors I described are considerably harder to avoid in that situation, and I am not asking you to dismantle them in the middle of it. What I would ask is only that you know they are running. Knowing costs nothing, and it means that when the season lifts, and it will, you will not have to first discover what has been happening. Now let me tell you the other kind of story, because I have told you the one that worked. Yvette was a Leo client of mine, a woman in her 40s when she first came to me, who spent 9 years waiting to be named. She worked in a mid-sized firm under a founder, a man perhaps 20 years older than her, who had told her, repeatedly and I believe sincerely, that she was the future of the place. She was extraordinarily good. She brought in the work, she kept the staff, she was the reason 3 important clients had not left. And every year the conversation about succession was had, and every year it was postponed, for reasons that were never absurd. A bad quarter. A restructure. The founder's health at one point, 9 years of reasons. She came to me somewhere in the middle of that, and I told her what I would tell any of you. I said, Yvette, you are waiting to be given something that is already being done by you. The firm runs on you. The title is a formality, and the formality is being withheld, and at some point you have to decide whether the formality is what you are actually after. She said, of course it is not the title. And then she said, but I have earned it, and he should say so. My darling, that second sentence is the whole story. He did say so, eventually. In the 9th year he named her, publicly, at an event, and made a speech about her, that she described to me afterward, as everything she had wanted to hear for a decade. She came to see me about 18 months later. She had, in that 18 months, found a new person to be validated by, a board member, older, senior, whose approval she had begun organizing herself around in precisely the way she had organized herself around the founder. Same shape, different man, and she could see herself doing it, which was the distressing part, and could not stop. She said, I do not understand. I got the thing. Why am I doing it again? Here is why, and it is the reason I am telling you this story before I give you the last section rather than after. She had never wanted the position. She had wanted the granting of it. And a granting is an event, and events are over the moment they finish, and a person whose entire structure rests on having been given something needs to be given something again fairly soon, because the previous granting has already passed into the past tense and cannot be used twice. 9 years of waiting, 1 evening of speech, and 18 months later she was back at the beginning with a different man's approval to organize around. I want to be careful not to be cruel about Yvette, because she was not foolish, and this is one of the most common patterns I encounter. She did everything correctly by the logic she had. The logic was the problem. Pause with me for a moment, my darling. I know this has been a great deal. I want to tell you why I made this reading, and why I made it evergreen. Leos write to me constantly about this, and the letters have a very consistent shape. They are almost never asking for more than they have. They are asking, in various careful phrasings, whether it is acceptable to want to be first in their own life, and whether wanting that makes them the thing they have spent their entire life being accused of being, which is self-centered. It does not, and the confusion between those two things has cost your sign more than any other single misunderstanding I know of. If this reading is bringing you something tonight, would you do me 3 small things? Like this video, it tells YouTube that this matters to real people, and it carries it to another Leo who is at this moment declining something in the first half second, smoothly, before anybody in the room notices a decline occurred. Subscribe and turn on the bell if you have not, because I make these readings for every sign and I intend to keep making them. And write to me in the comments, and I want the specific thing rather than the general thing. Not where you have been waiting to be put first, which is the question everybody asks and which produces a comment section full of sighing. Give me the instance, the one you chose earlier, from the last month, from whichever of the 5 produced the drop, one line, what you did, and which of the 5 it was. I am asking for the concrete one, because your sign can discuss the general version of this for an hour without ever touching it, and the specific instance from the last month is the only version that has any traction in it. And if you have been here a while, membership on this channel means readings reach you before they are published, and it means you and I actually speak in the comments, because I read member comments first, and I answer there more often and more personally than I am able to anywhere else. Now let me tell you what it actually feels like when you begin occupying the position, because the picture most people carry is wrong, and the wrong picture is itself an obstacle. It does not feel like triumph. I want to say that first, because your sign is expecting triumph, and will not recognize the actual thing when it arrives. It feels, at the start, like rudeness. That is the honest description. The first several times you state a preference plainly, decline a request without producing 3 reasons, or accept a compliment without appending a qualifier, you will experience it as having been slightly rude. Not confident. Rude. And you will want to go back and soften it, and some of you will send a follow-up message doing exactly that within the hour. My darling, that sensation is not a moral signal. It is the feeling of a very old reflex not firing, and a reflex that does not fire leaves a small gap, and your nervous system reads the gap as an error. Then it feels like exposure. Once you have stated what you want, you are visible as a person who wants it, and if you do not get it, everybody watching will know you did not get it. That is the actual fear underneath a great deal of Leo deferral, and it is not vanity. It is the accurate perception that your sign is watched more closely than most, and that failures in your case are more visible than other people's. Then, and this takes longer, it begins to feel like quiet. That is the part nobody describes. A considerable amount of your daily energy has been going into the management of other people's comfort with your presence, and when that stops, the reclaimed energy does not present as excitement. It presents as a strange, slightly flat spaciousness, and I would ask you not to mistake it for depression, because a number of Leos do. And eventually, it feels like accuracy. Not power, accuracy. The sensation of being described correctly by your own life. Your sign does not actually want to be admired, whatever the world believes about you. Your sign wants to be seen accurately, which is nearly the opposite thing, and occupying your own position is the only route to it, because a person who has been deferring for 30 years has not given anybody enough information to see her accurately, even if they wanted to. Now I want to answer the objection directly, because I raised it a moment ago and then walked past it, and it is the question underneath every letter your sign sends me. Is this selfish? Let me take it seriously rather than reassuring you, because a reassurance will not survive your first real test of it. The reason your sign cannot settle this question is that you have been given one word for 2 entirely different things. The first thing is taking more than your share, occupying space that belongs to somebody else, requiring other people to arrange themselves around you continually. That is genuine self-centeredness. It exists, it is unpleasant to be near, and your sign is accused of it constantly. The second thing is occupying your own share, having preferences and saying them, accepting what is offered without discounting it, taking the position you are already doing the work of. Those are not the same, and they are not even adjacent, and the entire difficulty of a Leo life is that you were taught one word for both. And here is how you can tell them apart, and it is a genuinely reliable test rather than a comforting phrase. Self-centeredness makes other people smaller. That is its actual signature. In the presence of a genuinely self-centered person, everybody else in the room becomes slightly less than they are. They talk less. They shrink their own news. What I am describing does the opposite. A person occupying her own position, plainly, without apology, gives everybody else in the room permission to do the same. That is not a lovely idea, my darling. It is the observable effect, and you have almost certainly experienced it from the other side. Think of somebody in your life who states what she wants without drama and receives what is offered without deflecting. Notice that being near her is easier, not harder. So the test is not how it feels to you. Your feelings on this subject are unreliable because they were calibrated a long time ago by somebody with an interest in your compliance. The test is what happens to the people around you over months. If they are becoming more themselves, you are doing the second thing. And I will add one uncomfortable observation, which is that the accusation of selfishness is very rarely made by people who are being harmed. It is made by people who are being inconvenienced. Those two produce identical language and are entirely different situations, and learning to hear the difference is most of the work of the next year. Now I want to tell you something difficult, my darling, because I have never given your sign comfort without honesty, and I am not going to begin tonight. Some of the people around you are not going to like this. Not most of them, but some, and probably not the ones you would predict, and I want you to be prepared rather than ambushed. Here is the mechanism. Over years, an arrangement formed. You occupied a particular amount of space and no more, and you yielded reliably, and you took the role that kept things running, and the people around you built their own lives, partly on the assumption that those things would continue. Most of them did not do this cynically. Most of them are not even aware they did it. But an arrangement is an arrangement whether or not anybody signed it. And when you change your side of one, the other side feels it. It will very rarely arrive as objection. It arrives as concern, which is much harder to argue with. Are you sure? That does not sound like you. You have always been so easygoing about this. I only want what is best for you. Somebody who loves you will say one of those sentences within about a month of you beginning, and it will land squarely on the oldest part of you, and your instinct will be to demonstrate that you have not changed by immediately yielding something. So let me give you the test I have used for 35 years, because it works, and it takes 2 seconds. Genuine concern asks questions. Resistance makes statements. A person actually worried about you will want to know what you are thinking. They will ask about the practicalities. They will engage with your reasoning, and they may still disagree at the end of it, and that disagreement will feel like a conversation. A person defending an arrangement will tell you what you are. They will remind you what you have always been. They will describe your future to you as though they have already seen it, and they will do it warmly, and there will be no questions in it anywhere. Listen for the questions, my darling. Their presence or absence tells you everything, and it is audible. And there is one more version of this that is specific to your sign, and that I want to name plainly. Some of the people who love you best in your generous mode. Not because they are exploitative, because that is the version they met, and it is genuinely lovable, and it also happens to cost them nothing. When you begin keeping some of the energy you have been distributing, they may experience it as coldness. Somebody may tell you that you have become hard. You have not become hard. You have become finite, which you always were, and which they had never had to notice. Most of them will adjust. I want to emphasize that because it is true, and it is easy to forget in the middle of it. The great majority of people who love you will simply recalibrate over a few months, and a surprising number will tell you afterward that they are glad, and some will admit they had been worried about you for years and had not known how to say it. A small number will not adjust. They were attached to the arrangement rather than to you, and discovering that is painful, and it is not a loss. It is information you have been paying a great deal for and only now receiving. Let me speak now to specific dimensions of your life, my darling, because this operates differently depending on where it appears. In your work. This is where the third of the 5 behaviors lives most often, the role that keeps things running instead of the role you want. And the practical instruction here is unusually concrete. At some point in the next month, you will be in a conversation about who does what. Say the thing you want to do before you say the thing you are willing to do. That is the entire intervention. Your sign habitually leads with availability, and whoever states a preference first shapes the discussion, and you have been letting other people go first for years by volunteering to be flexible in the opening sentence. In love and partnership, here it is the second behavior, making your want conditional on somebody else's. And I want to say something to those of you in long relationships that may be uncomfortable. Your partner may genuinely not know what you want, in quite fundamental areas, after many years, because you have consistently answered the question with a version of, "I do not mind." That is not their failure of attention. They have been given accurate information and it has been, "I do not mind." If you are not partnered, this is the pattern that most reliably attracts people who are happy to have their preferences accommodated, which is a different category of person from one who wants to know yours. In family, this is where the arrangement is oldest and most load-bearing, and where the resistance will be most pronounced, and also where the eventual reorganization is most valuable. If you have been the reliable one in a family for decades, expect a difficult few months, and expect, on the other side of them, a considerably more honest set of relationships than existed before. In money, the fifth behavior, discounting an offer, has a direct financial expression, and I will be blunt about it. Your sign undercharges, not from lack of confidence in the work, but from a reluctance to name a number and watch somebody's face while they hear it. The specific fear is not being refused. It is being visible as a person who thought she was worth that. And in your inner life, this is the deepest one, and it is the whole of the reading, really. What is actually being asked of you is not a change in behavior, although behavior is where it will show. It is the retirement of a very old and very reasonable idea, which is that your place must be granted by somebody with the standing to grant it. That idea was installed early. It made sense in the room where it was installed, and it has been obsolete for a considerable time. Now let me give you the practical part before the ritual, because I do not believe in leaving a person with an accurate description of her situation and no method, and because your sign will convert an insight into nothing at all unless it arrives with instructions. There are 4 moves. They are small on purpose. Your sign will want a large gesture, and a large gesture is exactly what will not happen, because a large gesture requires a moment that feels significant enough to justify it, and no such moment is coming. The first move is to answer the question. When somebody asks what you would like, say what you would like. Once this week. Not the important version. Dinner, the film, which day? Say the actual answer rather than, I do not mind, and then, and this is the difficult half, do not follow it with a reason. Your sign will want to justify the preference immediately, which converts it back into a request. The second move is to stop at thank you. When something is offered or you are praised, say thank you and then stop talking. Do not add the context that makes it smaller. Do not distribute the credit. Let the silence run slightly too long, which will feel physically uncomfortable, and that discomfort is the whole of the exercise in miniature. The third move is to leave one thing unheld. Identify one situation, this week, that you are holding together and that somebody else could hold, imperfectly, if you did not. And do not hold it. Something will be done less well than you would have done it. That is not the cost of the exercise, my darling. That is the exercise, because your sign will only believe this once it has watched the standard drop and the world continue. And the fourth move is to state one thing you want out loud to one person. Not to the room, one person, one sentence, in ordinary language. Corinne's entire turning point was writing a sentence and reading it back. Yours can be saying one to somebody in a kitchen. 4 moves. None of them takes more than a few seconds. Every one of them will feel disproportionate to how small it is, and that disproportion is the accurate measure of how long the old arrangement has been running. Now, my darling, let me give you the ritual, and I want to tell you in advance that it is going to sound too simple and that it is the most difficult one I have ever designed for your sign. You are going to do something entirely alone that you would ordinarily only do if somebody were watching. That is it. That is the ritual. Let me tell you exactly how, because your sign will need the staging and will do it properly if given a specification. Choose an evening. Set a table. Not a tray, not the counter, not eating standing up, which a great many of you do when there is nobody to be hosted. Set the actual table, in the way you would set it for somebody you were pleased to be expecting. Use the good things. The plate you keep for occasions, the glass that is not the everyday glass, the napkin that is cloth. And I know precisely what your sign is thinking, which is that it is a waste to use them for nothing. My darling, it is not nothing. That assessment is the entire subject of this reading appearing in the form of a plate. Make or buy something you actually want to eat, chosen for no other reason. Dress. Not elaborately, but deliberately, and choose something that makes you feel like the version of yourself you would be if you were being received somewhere. Light a gold candle for the sun if you have one, and a red one for the heart. If you have neither, my darling, this works entirely without them, because the objects have never been the mechanism. Sit down, take 7 slow breaths, longer on the exhale than the inhale. Then, before you eat, write one sentence on a card or a piece of paper and set it where a second person's place would be. The sentence is what you want. Not a wish, not a goal, and not a hope. A preference, stated plainly, in the present tense. As though somebody had asked you and you had answered honestly for once. I want the role rather than the running of it. I want to be chosen and not only needed. I want a Sunday that is mine. I want to be paid what the work is worth. I want to stop being the one who handles it. Whatever it actually is. One sentence. Do not improve it. Then eat, slowly, and read the sentence while you do. And here is the part that makes this ritual work, and it is the part your sign will most want to skip. Tell nobody. Do not photograph it. Do not mention it in passing tomorrow. Do not turn it into an anecdote, which you could do beautifully and which would be very funny. It stays entirely unwitnessed. I am going to explain in a moment exactly why that instruction is the whole of the exercise. And now, my darling Leo, I want to give you the thing I told you at the beginning that I was saving for the end. I warned you it would sound like bad news for about 30 seconds. Give me the full minute. But before I say it, one last thing, and it will take 15 seconds. Think of the moment you have been waiting for, whatever it is. The conversation in which it is finally acknowledged, the offer, the promotion, the person turning toward you and saying the thing. Now notice something about the picture you just produced. Who else is in it? For nearly every Leo I have ever asked, there is somebody else in that image. Not incidentally, structurally. Somebody delivering it, or somebody present while it is delivered, or a room, or an audience of some size. The moment you have been waiting for has other people in it, and they are not decoration. Hold that. It is about to matter a great deal. Here it is. Nobody is going to notice. When you finally occupy your own position, there will be no acknowledgement of it. No one is going to say, "At last, there you are." There will be no moment, no announcement, no person who turns toward you and confirms that the thing has happened. You will state a preference at a dinner table on an ordinary Tuesday, and the conversation will simply continue, and nobody in the room will register that something has changed in you, and you will go home slightly shaken and entirely unwitnessed. That is the bad news. And for a sign ruled by the sun, it is a genuinely hard one, because an unwitnessed event barely qualifies as an event to you. Your ruler is the thing everything else is measured against. Something that happens with nobody measuring it feels, to your sign, like something that did not quite happen. And that, my darling, is the actual reason so many Leos are still waiting. You have not been waiting for the position. Corinne had the position for 19 years. Yvette ran the entire firm. Neither of them lacked authority for a single day. You have been waiting for the ceremony. Because a ceremony is witnessed, and a witnessed thing is real, and your sign has never fully believed in anything that happened without an audience. That is not vanity, and I want to be very clear about that. It is the structural consequence of being ruled by a reference point. A reference point that nobody is referring to does not feel like a reference point. So you have been declining the position, quietly, in 5 specific ways, while waiting for somebody to hold a ceremony that would make taking it official. Now let me give you the turn, and this is why it is not bad news. A thing that is granted by an audience can be withdrawn by an audience. That is the whole of it. Yvette got her ceremony. A speech, an event, everything she had wanted to hear for 9 years, delivered publicly by the man whose word she had been waiting on, and 18 months later she needed another one, from a different man, because a granting is an event, and events expire, and the granted position was never actually hers. It was on loan from the person who granted it, and it required continual renewal from a succession of people qualified to renew it. Whereas Corinne, on a Thursday afternoon in an application week, alone at a desk, wrote a sentence and read it back and thought, "Oh, I have wanted this for 11 years. Nobody saw that. There was no audience. It was the least ceremonial moment imaginable, and it is the moment she still refers to, decades later, as the one that changed things. My darling, an occupied position cannot be taken back. Because nobody gave it to you, that is not a consolation for the absence of the ceremony. It is the reason the absence of the ceremony matters. The two things are the same fact viewed from either side. Do you remember the third card, the Emperor? Enthroned, upright, still, and nobody crowning him. No ceremony taking place anywhere in that image. He is simply sitting in the chair, and he has evidently been sitting there a long time, and the entire meaning of the card is that the sitting is not in question. Nobody is in that picture except him. That is not loneliness, my darling. That is what unwithdrawable authority looks like when somebody draws it. And that is why the ritual ends with tell nobody, not as a test of discipline, and not because there is anything wrong with being seen, because your sign needs, once, to have the experience of a real thing occurring, with no witness at all, so that you discover it was real anyway. One evening, a properly set table, the good plate, a sentence about what you want, and not a single other person knowing it happened. If you can do that once, you will have taken the position, and nobody will congratulate you, and that is precisely how you will know it is yours. My dear Leo, before I let you go, 3 small things. 1. If any part of this reading found you tonight, if one of the 5 produced a drop in your stomach, if Corinne's sentence about protecting the past, or Yvette's second granting landed somewhere real, tap that like button. It is the simplest way to tell YouTube to carry this to another Leo who is at this moment waiting, with enormous dignity, in a queue that has nobody at the front of it. 2. Subscribe and turn on the bell. I make these readings for every sign, and I make them so they can be found whenever somebody needs them, rather than only during a particular week. If you become a member, readings reach you before they are published, and you and I actually speak in the comments, because I read member comments first. 3. And this is the one I care about most. Give me the instance. The one you chose earlier, from the last month, from whichever of the 5 produced the drop. 1 line. What you did and which of the 5 it was. I read every single comment, truly, and I want to tell you why this particular comment section is going to matter more than most. It is going to be full of very small things. Meals, meetings, a decision about a weekend, a compliment that got a qualifier attached to it. And every Leo who scrolls it is going to recognize 4 of them as things she did herself this week, and she is going to understand, considerably faster than I could explain it, that this is not a grand question about her destiny. It is a question about Tuesday. And if this reading gave you something and you ever want to say thank you more directly, a super thanks is never expected and always felt. And it is a genuine part of how I keep making these readings as carefully as I make them. If you know another Leo who has been holding everything together and calling it generosity, send this to her tonight. You may not realize how much a single share matters. It is how this work finds the person who needs it. Thank you, my darling. This community has become something I genuinely did not expect when I began. The universe is not about to put you first. It has never held that position open pending a decision, and there is no one arriving to confer it. The chair has been empty the entire time, my darling, and you have been standing beside it, holding it for somebody, defending it from people whose faces you cannot even see, waiting with tremendous dignity for the person with the authority to tell you to sit down. There is no such person. There never was. Sit down. Nobody will clap. That is how you will know it is finally yours. I am Madame Aurora from Manhattan, and I love you, my dear Leo. I will see you in the next reading.